He walked away from $50 million. Imagine turning your back on mainstream fame when everything seemed perfect. Why would someone do that? That's the mystery at the heart of Dave Chappelle's story. Dave Chappelle has lived a life that reads like a legend, and it begins far from the spotlights that would later define him. Born in 1973 in Washington, D.C., to two professors, William and Yvonne, he grew up in a family where books, debates, and ideas were part of everyday life. His father taught at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, while his mother worked for the government before moving into academia herself. That meant Dave's childhood was split between Maryland, where the family lived, and Ohio, where he spent summers with his father. Those alternating backdrops, city streets on one side and rural quiet on the other, created a rhythm he would return to as an adult, balancing fame with retreat, chaos with calm. From the beginning, Chappelle's compass pointed toward the stage. He memorized routines by Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor the way other kids memorize baseball stats. He didn't just admire them, he studied their timing, their facial expressions, the way they held a crowd. By his teens, he was already performing at open mics. Soon after, he was standing in the harsh spotlight of the Apollo Theater's amateur night, testing himself in front of some of the toughest audiences in the country. In 1992, HBO's Def Comedy Jam introduced him to a national audience. His fearless energy and sharp observations marked him as a comic well beyond his years. Hollywood was quick to take notice. In 1993, Mel Brooks cast him in Robin Hood Men in Tights. The role was small, but it was a signal. More followed, a part in The Nutty Professor in 1996, and then his own cult classic, Half-Baked, in 1998, which he co-wrote and starred in. These early projects showed his range, from sidekick to star, but Hollywood still didn't quite know what to do with his voice. That voice found its home in 2003 when Comedy Central launched Chappelle's Show. What followed was nothing short of cultural explosion. The sketches weren't just funny, they were searing, clever, and unafraid to poke at the rawest parts of American life. The racial draft, Charlie Murphy's true Hollywood stories, the Wayne Brady sketch. These weren't just punchlines, they became part of everyday conversation. Catchphrases spread like wildfire. You didn't have to watch the show to know the jokes. They were already echoing in classrooms, offices, and neighborhoods across the country. At that point, Chappelle was on top of the world. And then, just as quickly, he walked away. In 2005, at the peak of his fame, he turned down a contract worth a reported $50 million. To fans and media, it looked unthinkable. But for Chappelle, it was about survival. He spoke later about the pressures, the lack of control, the feeling that the show was no longer aligned with his vision. Walking away didn't just protect his sanity, it added to his myth. For almost a decade, Chappelle disappeared from the mainstream. He made unannounced appearances at small clubs, perfecting his craft outside the glare of cameras. That retreat became a legend of its own. By the time he returned in 2014 with a sold-out run at Radio City Music Hall, audiences were starving for him. 2 years later, his Saturday Night Live hosting gig earned him an Emmy and reminded everyone that no time away could dull his edge. Netflix followed with one of the most lucrative comedy deals in history, securing his specials for a global audience. After the chaos of Hollywood and the myth of his disappearance, the most surprising chapter of Dave Chappelle's story is where he chose to rebuild his life: Ohio. For most celebrities, retreat means a gated estate in Los Angeles or a penthouse in New York. But Chappelle chose farmland. His main property sits on Springfield Road, a working 65-acre spread that feels worlds away from the entertainment industry. Rolling fields, a pond glinting in the distance, barns built to professional standards. This is no Hollywood hideout. It's a space designed for living, breathing, and in his own way, creating. The farmhouse itself tells the story of someone who values privacy without giving up comfort. Inside, the kitchen is built for both family mornings and late-night writing sessions. Granite counters and high-end appliances make it functional, but the real story is in the layout. Open, welcoming, a space where you can imagine comedians gathered around, scribbling jokes on napkins, while coffee brews. The great room rises toward a skylight ceiling anchored by a towering stone fireplace. On gray Ohio days, the fire provides not just heat, but atmosphere. A reminder that this is a place meant to hold people together. Bedrooms sit at opposite ends of the house, each with spa-like bathrooms. Downstairs, an entertainment room with its own fireplace feels like a private club. the kind of space where Chappelle could test new material in front of friends before anyone else hears it. Outside, the property stretches into a kind of personal playground. A patio leads to a deck, a pool waits for summer gatherings, and a horse barn stands ready for real work, not just scenery. It's rural life taken seriously, not as a backdrop, but as a way of living. Yet this farm is only one side of his Ohio chapter. In nearby Xenia, Chappelle owns a second home that offers something different, a reset button. Set on 2 acres, it has a more modern feel, designed less for spectacle and more for comfort. Updates like new siding, a whole house generator, and a polished kitchen show that it's meant to run smoothly, quietly, without fuss. The family opens under vaulted ceilings, giving the house a loft-like energy. A shed on the property doubles as a workshop or rehearsal space, and an in-ground pool makes it a spot for family afternoons rather than public performances. If the farm is Chappelle's stage, Xenia is his retreat. The contrast between the 2 homes mirrors the contrast in his life. Public creativity balanced by private calm. At the farm, he's known to host pop-up shows, inviting musicians and comedians to perform under tents, creating spontaneous festivals in the Ohio night. At Xenia, he can close the door and simply be Dave, a father, a husband, a neighbor. The rhythm of moving between those spaces is what keeps him grounded. But home is only one expression of personality. The garage tells its own story. Chappelle's car collection is eclectic, mixing luxury with practicality, speed with symbolism. There's the Mercedes AMG G63, a twin-turbo SUV that screams star power. It's leather-lined and powerful, the kind of vehicle that can glide down a Beverly Hills boulevard but looks equally at home pulling into a gravel drive in Ohio. Then there's the opposite end of the spectrum, a Ford F-150 8th generation, worth around $14,000 on the used market. It's not about price, it's about message. America's comedian in America's truck. Practical, reliable, unpretentious. A reminder that the farm life isn't cosplay. For pure thrill, there's a Porsche 911 Carrera S, capable of hitting 60 miles per hour in just 3.5 seconds. Imagine Chappelle at dawn, slipping behind the wheel, a back road winding out in front of him, the engine growling as he runs through punchlines in his head. The Range Rover Sport adds British luxury with off-road ability, a perfect bridge between the 2 halves of his life, the world stage and the quiet fields. And tucked away is a Ducati 848 Evo, an Italian sport bike that matches his obsession with timing. Quick, sharp, thrilling, the physical equivalent of a perfectly landed joke. Together, the cars aren't just vehicles, they're metaphors. Each one reflects a side of him, the star, the worker, the craftsman, the thrill seeker. Just like his comedy, they're different tools for different audiences. Behind the garages, the farms, the retreats is the financial engine that makes all of it possible. Dave Chappelle's net worth is estimated around $70 million. But what's striking is not just the number, it's how he built it. Netflix specials have been his gold standard since 2016, each one reportedly paying between $20 and $24 million. Titles like The Age of Spin, Deep in the Heart of Texas, Equanimity, The Bird Revelation, A Sticks and Stones, and The Closer don't just fill arenas. They dominate global streaming, keeping his name in constant circulation. Stand-up tours remain a powerhouse. In 2023 alone, his shows grossed over $36 million across 19 dates, selling more than 250,000 tickets. Unlike many comedians, Chappelle often controls his own production and ticketing, which means a bigger share of every dollar flows back to him. He also renegotiated royalties from Chappelle's show in 2021, reclaiming income that had long been tangled in licensing disputes. Beyond comedy, he's picked up paychecks from film roles, Saturday Night Live appearances, voice work for commercials, and even merchandise tied to his tours. But ask anyone who follows him closely and they'll tell you money for Chappelle is a means, not an end. It funds freedom. It allows him to live where he wants, create on his own terms, and support the communities that raised him. That leads into another part of his life story that often gets overlooked: philanthropy and the quiet ways he gives back. Behind the headlines about money, tours, and Netflix deals is a quieter part of Dave Chappelle's life, one that rarely makes national news but matters just as much to the people who live near him. Philanthropy has always been there, not as a flashy campaign, but as a series of consistent, low-key acts. In 2004, at the height of his Comedy Central fame, he volunteered with the Seeds of Peace International Camp, a program designed to bring together young people from regions torn by conflict. For a comedian known for dissecting cultural divides, it was a natural extension of what he already did on stage, creating dialogue where there had only been tension. Education has remained one of his deepest commitments. Chappelle has long supported the Duke Ellington School of the Arts in Washington, D.C., the high school he once dreamed of attending. He's donated financially, but he's also shown up in person, returning in 2022 for a graduation ceremony where the school's auditorium was renamed after him. Instead of a simple ribbon cutting, the event turned into a candid Q&A session. Students pressed him about his comedy and his views, and rather than deflecting, he engaged directly. It wasn't polished or rehearsed, but it reflected something honest. His willingness to stand in front of a room and face questions without hiding behind celebrity status. His support extends beyond Washington. In Ohio, residents of Yellow Springs can tell you stories of Chappelle underwriting community events, covering repair costs, or funding local organizations quietly, without press releases or photo ops. During the pandemic, when comedy stages across the world went dark, he transformed his farm into a venue for socially distanced shows. The move didn't just give comedians a stage, it funneled income to local vendors, stagehands, and staff who had lost work. That kind of micro-philanthropy, woven into daily life rather than branded as a movement, is what locals say defines him most. For all his mic drop moments on stage, his generosity often comes in whispers. His personal life mirrors that same philosophy, steady, private, and built on long-term commitment. In 2001, he married Elaine Mendoza Erfe, a woman he had been dating long before the Netflix specials and Emmy Awards. Together, they've raised 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, in Yellow Springs. Friends describe their partnership as low drama, rooted in mutual support rather than Hollywood spectacle. For Chappelle, family life in Ohio is more than a lifestyle choice. It's part of the reason he stepped away from Los Angeles in the first place. Far from paparazzi and studio executives, he can be a husband, a father, and simply a neighbor. Another constant is his faith. At 17, long before the world knew his name, Chappelle converted to Islam. He doesn't often speak about it publicly, but when he does, he chooses his words carefully. In a 2005 interview with Time, he said, "I don't usually talk about my religion in public because I don't want people to associate me and my flaws with this beautiful thing, and I believe it's beautiful if you learn it the right way." That framework explains a lot about his comedy. Irreverent on the surface, compassionate at its core. He has appeared in educational videos, including one about the history of the Zamzam well in Mecca, and he often credits his faith with helping him keep perspective, reminding him that his platform should be used for more than money or fame. His values spill into his political choices as well. In the 2020 U.S. presidential race, he endorsed Andrew Yang, even joining his campaign rallies to introduce the idea of universal basic income to audiences who might never attend a policy lecture but would line up for a comedy show. 4 years later, in January 2024, he headlined a campaign event for actor Hill Harper, who was running for a Senate seat in Michigan. Chappelle wasn't there as a polished pundit, but as himself, lending his credibility and microphone to someone else's fight. It's a pattern he's repeated over the years, showing up where it matters, blending civic engagement with performance, using his platform to amplify rather than overshadow. Even his style tells a story. On stage, he's instantly recognizable in his jumpsuits and hoodies, always with a cigarette in hand. The look signals working-class honesty, no frills, and no filter, even when he's standing under the most expensive lighting Netflix can buy. Offstage, he blends into the Ohio backdrop. Boots, flannel, weatherproof jackets, the uniform of local farmers and craftspeople. And when he does lean into fashion, it's often playful or ironic. Limited edition sneakers, tour merchandise, or subtle nods to African and Islamic design. The message is clear. He's not trying to be anyone but himself. That's what makes Chappelle difficult to pin down. He is at once a comedian, a storyteller, a community builder, and a cultural critic. He has courted controversy, sparked debate, and occasionally set off firestorms of criticism. And yet, through it all, he remains a figure audiences cannot look away from. His timing is unmatched. His influence is undeniable. His ability to walk away from fame at its peak and then return on his own terms is something almost no other entertainer has pulled off. Chappelle's story is one of dualities: public and private, city and country, irreverent and compassionate, wealthy and unpretentious. He is a man who built his fortune by making people laugh, but spends his days in a small Ohio town, giving back quietly and living far from the chaos of Hollywood. For his fans, that duality only adds to the fascination. It suggests that success doesn't have to look like red carpets or endless self-promotion. It can look like balance, authenticity, and the courage to define life on your own terms. So when you hear Dave Chappelle's name, you're not just hearing about a comedian. You're hearing about someone who reshaped comedy, challenged culture, and then chose to write his story in places most people would never think to look. From city streets to farmland, from global stages to quiet backyards, he remains one of the most compelling figures of his generation, and his journey is far from over. Stay tuned for more star-sizzling stories. Until next time, peace, love, and happiness.